Puebloan, and it's not going to be much different than what we see today, really. Because, you know, in geologic time, when you think, you know, 80 to 100 million years ago, that they say that the inland seas came through here, and, you know, several different times, and of course it took millions of years, centuries for that water to recede, and then it came back. And that's why we have all our sandstone, and then, you know, the various upsurges of the earth, and then the water draining off, and so we have water erosion, wind erosion that created our canyons and the arches, all these wonderful formations we have here in the Southwest. Now that was a long time, right? And things change a lot in a million years or 10 million years or whatever it is. But it doesn't change a lot actually here in this, you know, the 1200 years or 2000 years. It looks pretty much the same, really. They used everything in their natural world to survive, and they thrived here for many centuries. So we have, again, this beautiful Colorado pinyon pine, and it makes these beautiful pine nuts. Anybody like to eat those? They're very delicious, aren't they? I was in Albuquerque a couple weekends ago and noticed they were $19.99 a pound. I thought, I guess I'll buy 1/16 of a pound. Anyway, actually, when you live here, growing up, we had about a bumper crop about every 7 or so years where people all go out and gather. It's not that they produce every 7 years. I guess they produce around 2.5 years really, really well, but it converges, it seems to, about every 7 years, and you get a really good crop. Anyway, they're really delicious, and I'm sure they thought so too. 900 calories a cup. Okay. Yeah, they make $19.99 go pretty far, wouldn't it? To cut down a tree, one this size, they say it takes about 800 to 900 whacks. And I've been on a tour in Cliff Palace, and the ranger said, oh, 5,000 whacks, and I went, wow, I didn't know it was that. And she said, yeah, for one this size, of course, you know, a much more energy expended to cut down a great big old tree, okay? So they needed all those calories. They also had, at the time when they were first here, the first few centuries they were here, they had the deer, the elk, the bear, you know, at their, you know, to eat. And we know they ate those things. In fact, they also ate Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep in some of the early basket maker sites that they've excavated. What else about, oh, I know, I can't leave out this wonderful yucca. This is the broadleaf yucca. There's two types in the park, this beautiful broadleaf and then a narrow leaf, which is much smaller. But it is your grocery store plant. Realize how sharp they are on the end. Good for poking holes for sewing, making good needles. These tendrils that we believe that they later on used to make their paintbrushes. Now the people here were just making a rough pottery. But when we move into the classic Pueblo period, when you visit our really fine museum, okay, you're going to see the beautiful Mesa Verde black on white pottery. And they used these for paintbrushes, okay? They became very proficient at it. Anyway, there's this wonderful fibrous material inside. You get the green off. It's very tough, very strong. There's a 800-foot yucca fiber rope over at the edge of the Cedars Museum in Blanding, Utah, that they made out of this yucca fiber. You can see remnants of the blossoms that were here. And about 3 weeks ago, they were soft and waxy and a little bit thicker, and they're good to put in your salads. They're very edible. And you won't see them here because the deer have been, as I've gone through the weeks, I've been seeing the deer munch, and they're gone. Anyway, but you'll see other yuccas with the big fruits on them, the big cucumber-shaped fruits, different sizes. And those are edible too. You can boil them. I have not eaten them yet. I'm going to have to do that. But anyway, so wonderful plant here. And if you dig up the roots, there's soap. You know, yucca root shampoo is in here, and soap. Anyway, it's not a yucca, or it's not a aloe or a cactus as you might think. It's a member of the lily family. Isn't that interesting? It doesn't look like any lily I've ever seen. But well, when you think about the lily leaves, though, you know, before they flower. Anyway, beautiful plant. But let's go in and look at one of their first types of dwellings in here. And Cliff Palace is wonderful, and you are going to enjoy it. And you go, wow, we saw Cliff Palace. But let me tell you, this is not as glamorous. Okay, obviously it's Cliff Palace. But Cliff Palace might not have existed had this not existed first. These are the ancestors of the people that built Cliff Palace. These are what we call the basket makers. This is around 600, this site. So the Mesa Top Loop is so good. And it was designed to be a chronological journey through time to show you their architectural and cultural development. So it's a 6-mile loop, and we're going to stop at various sites, and we're going to culminate in Cliff Palace. But you're going to understand and appreciate Cliff Palace more because of this.
My name is David if you have fun. If you don't have fun, Might be Paula. But you know, leaning on, it's easy to remind each other. It's so easy. Some areas, just natural for us to do that, but gently remind each other of that. And then if you can hold your breath the whole time, that'd be good. Any questions at all? So I'm going to share with you some ideas of what may or may not happen to these people. And keep in mind what science is. You know, science says you have a control that can be repeated. So my question to you right now, can archaeology do that? Cannot. It's a social science, I guess, or a soft science. And they've actually, archaeologists have come up with different sciences as well. And some dating methods which are amazing. But it in itself is really not a true science. So keep in mind, when I share with you what may or may not have happened to these people is nothing but theory. And I'll share with you with some of those ideas. But when people debate this in our little break room in the museum basement, and that's fun. I watch them, and I'll say something just to watch them get even more aggravated. You know, they get really passionate about it. But for me, look over there. Look at that, man. This is amazing. 700 years ago, somebody like you and I built this with sticks and stones. It's still standing. You know, they did it with their minds, their hands, and their heart. And to me, that's what's amazing about Mesa Verde National Park. This site's 90% original. Minus removal. How many of show of hands? How many houses of ours are going to be standing up 700, 800 years from now? You know, that's the part that I'm very passionate about. What human beings have accomplished, and maybe we'll share some of that as well. If you have any questions, please ask. It's $5 an answer, $10 a direct answer. Just kidding. Let's head on down.
At the same time as him.
Hold on, do you want to sit up here?
Isn't this beautiful? Yeah. So has anybody been here over a decade ago, maybe actually over a dozen years ago?
Yeah.
What was the name of the culture?
What they used to call them
Anasazi, yeah. And the correct pronunciation is Nasaza. Yeah, and it's basically from the Dene language, which just means foreigners who are not us from long ago. All your ancestors are Nasaza to the Dene. Everyone. Do you know what I'm saying? Who I'm saying when I say Dene? The people who today is referred to as the Navajo. Yeah, Navajo. There's a little over 600 alcove sites in the boundaries of Mesa Verde National Park, and then there's about 4,000 surface structures. So there was a big shift of population in these alcove sites, and then eventually they leave this only after occupying this alcove for about a century. And we know they're gone because every 5 years you'd see timbers cut down. And the earliest ones, the late 1100s for the alcove sites, and then the youngest timbers are in the 1280s. And then there's nothing else cut beyond that. And then complementing this is a dating method that's spot on accurate called archaeomagnetism. When they built their fires in their hearths, they heated up that hearth so much that it allows those iron particles to float. And then as that hearth cools, those iron particles align themselves with magnetic north. And you have a control off of that where magnetic north is, and then you can basically, you're counting backwards. And you can see there's no new fires built beyond 1300. So we know they're gone at that point. Why? Why these big movements? Some theories suggest they're moving in here because they were scared, wanted to protect themselves. And just evidence to support this is the alcove sites themselves are much more defendable. And then other things that help support this idea of defense is if you take a tour of Balcony House, when you exit Balcony House, that's the original path in and out of Balcony House. And the Pueblo people developed a tunnel. The inside of the tunnel, you can stand up in it, but the beginning and the end of the tunnel is exactly about a hat wide and 2 hats tall. This is a very accurate government measuring device. But that supports defense. Yeah, you really are challenged in the idea that you really don't find war items like shields. And I would be lying if I said you didn't find evidence of violence, because you do, but not significant enough to indicate that there was wars. And sometimes some of the bigger violence episodes took place much earlier, well, centuries before. So there's a huge challenge to defense theories because, you know, we get asked, well, maybe they didn't know how to make those things to protect them in battle, like a shield. You kind of look, really? Come on. You know? And then we have little finger drills, we have levels, we have plumb bobs, equinox markers, solstice markers, lunar calendars. And then rather than defense reasons for leaving, those archaeologists like the idea that these people left due to forest depletion and drought. And evidence for forest depletion shows up in a couple of ways. One is just, for me, in the summer of 2000, half the park burned, 40 square miles. And then we've had three major, we have fires going every year, but if we have had three major wildfires since 2000. But 2000, about 40 square miles. This park's 80 square miles, half the park burned. Man, the deer population exploded in Mancos Valley. You know, they like trees. But the other bigger part of the evidence, if you go to this trash pile, this talus slope that's out here, and the trash consisted of corn cobs, corn husks, human waste, broken pottery, dirt. Many of the burials are found in the trash pile because that's the only place you could dig. Most of them were with their knees drawn to their chest and wrapped with a turkey feather blanket. Very respectively done, but very practical too. Come back here December, January, you know, and see if you can dig in the ground. It's frozen solid. But dig really deep into those trash piles. You run into deer, elk, bighorn, all kinds of big mammals. And that's the oldest trash. The remaining trash is nothing but rodents and lizards. And that's an indicator of a loss of your forest. But in the drought, you could definitely see through dendrochronology there was a 24-year drought that took place. But this theory, like the other theory, has its challenges as well. Some of it's common sense, some of it's just plain old science. In the 12th century, when there was a lot of construction, there was actually a 50-year drought that they experienced. There might be a difference between these droughts. The one the one that took place twice as long in the 12th century might have still been warm. Drought doesn't necessarily mean, you know, hot. It just means not the correct amount of moisture. And so maybe that one in the 13th century, there was a cooling trend. Corn needs 120 days to mature. Where all of a sudden, maybe that drought was only giving them a 90, 100-day window to grow their food. There's some thoughts upon that. But the challenges are, okay, they're hurting for trees and big mammals to hunt and water. So the mountains are a really short walk with all these resources. Instead, they go farther and farther into the desert where there's less and less. You know, I think if you look at like Hopi, has anybody been to Hopi? That's a good example. You're lucky to find a stick, let alone a tree. That's definitely a challenge. Why would you go, if you're hurting for something, go to a place that has less of those things? That doesn't seem to mesh right. And there's one other theory, and I'm going to wait and share that with you over there. And that's when the descendants, Hopi, Zuni, Zia, Acoma, Santa Clara, San Domingo, San Ildefonso, Picuras, Popocki, Cochiti, Taos, Nambe, Laguna. I've missed a number of them, haven't I? That's what they think happened to their people. And but as you're walking down, pause for a moment and see the structure touching the roof of your alcove, and take a look at those two beams sticking out. Look at that whole wall. I won't give it away, but pause there and look at that wall. Then, right now where you're at, look over here at this round tower. See how it's symmetrical? To me, there must have been quite some understanding and a plan and an understanding of geometry. I don't think some guy named Bob could stand back here, and go, okay, Bill, it looks good, nail it. There's definitely plans and tools to help them do this. That's a round building with square blocks, and it's so symmetrical. That is just absolutely humbling. How did they get down? That's my favorite part. Some sites you can just walk down and take a slope to. Other sites are really elaborate, what archaeologists call hand and toe hole trails. Sometimes they carve depressions in the cliff face no bigger than your fist, maybe 2 fists wide. And that's how they'd access not only to the top where they commute to work, but also to get to their highways to the bottom of the canyon. And that's how you travel around as the canyon bottom. And then they knew this landscape so well that as soon as it started raining, they would instantly grab one. How old are you? You're 19. So you would know this area so well, it started to rain, and you'd go out immediately and into maybe one of your storage rooms. Because when you look at all these openings, they're actually doorways, not windows. And on minimum average, you go into one of those doorways, it'll give you access to 3 rooms. One room is going to have a fireplace, and archaeologists call that a habitation room. I call it a bedroom. Another room is going to have these mealing bins in it, where you have an instrument called a metate. That's a word Spain adopted from the Aztec culture. And then they have a hand tool for it. The word hand, mano, is the part, and that's kind of a kitchen in that room. Then you have a room for storage. Baskets, pottery, tools, video games, all that kind of stuff. And you would know exactly where that pour-off was, and so you'd grab that beautiful clay pot, big clay pot. And archaeology uses, again, a Spanish word called olla. You'd set it underneath that pour-off and collect water. Then you'd carefully come back with that water. You didn't want to spill any, you didn't want to drop the pot. And you carefully come back to your parents and say, hey, look, I didn't spill a drop. Because you're proud. It was a long hike. It's still raining. Go again. The people themselves were quite small since you're standing near all the burials. 5 foot on average, 5'4", and maybe 90 to 110 pounds. Women lived to be on average 35 years, men about 45 years. Women passed on earlier because of the childbearing, complications. And men died young because of child-rearing complications. How old are you? You're 19 also. How old are you? 14? How old are you? 11? Can you stand up here real quick? How old are you? 11. Oh, come on down. That's awesome. So I got a question for you. Hey, what's your name? Mariah, I'm David. Nice to meet you. Lucas? Handsome name. Nice to meet you, Lucas and David. So if you lived only to be like 35, 40 years, do you know what happened at your age? At your age, at 11 years old, you know what would be happening? You guys would be getting married. And having your own family and everything. Isn't that Looking inside of this painting, I want to explain to you what these are. And kiva comes from the Hopi language. It simply means room below, or room underground. And all the kivas had the appearance like you're going into this hole in the ground because they had roofs which are supported by these columns that come up from that bench, or banquette. And you had this kind of a cribbing method that's like an upside-down basket. And I encourage you to go to Spruce Tree House and go inside of the kiva there. One, because you can see it's a reconstructed roof by the Park Service, but it matches. We have a number of partially intact kiva roofs here in the park, and then throughout the Southwest there's loads. So we know how the roof went. And so basically it gives an appearance that it's completely flat up top, but it's semi-domed on the inside. And the doorway is right over the biggest hole in the floor, and that allows them to enter it by way of ladder. That also allows that fire, because that's the fireplace, to have a place to carry its smoke up and out of the same hole that you enter in. And then to keep that action continuing, you have to provide some sort of alternate air source. And that's like you guys are over here. Can you point to that hole? It's a tour. You have to do it a little more drone. Heat slides in, cool, clean air is brought in. And the air is going to come in enough force to flutter the smoke, so they dampen the air from blowing directly against the fire. And they do that different ways. In this kiva, they built a little wall, a single coarse mason wall. This kiva, they just plastered a slab of sandstone. And kivas, utilitarian things are found in kivas. Things like weaving looms, manos and metates. But also found in kivas things like clay smoking pipes, animals made of clay or turquoise, little effigy statues now. When Spain encountered these people, they recognized that as one extended family or clan per kiva. There's a total of 23 kivas here at Cliff Palace. And we have great kivas seem to have a more communal appearance. We have 7 in the park, but there's a place south of us by about 120 some odd miles as the crow flies, called Chaco Canyon, that's famous for its great kiva. It seems like a real communal area. So this whole place made to look like there's a real place, a big hole here in the Southwest, that is the Sipaku. And the church resembles what they chose to believe in. And to me, the most humbling part of construction is the kivas. When they lived up top, they dug into the ground. Here you have a series of retaining walls, and the natural bottom of this alcove, you just came from it. So why there's concrete up here and everything, this is all backfilled, dirt and debris hauled in and moved around with just baskets and pots. You know, isn't that amazing? Not just here, all of it. And that is just absolutely humbling in my mind. But basically, I'm going to share with you a story, and a story that I was honored to tell, and I had to edit it because it would take 2 hours to tell it. And this comes from some friends of mine that I work with, and I still visit quite often, and they live at a village called O'Reilly out of Hopi, near Hopi. So basically, what you're standing in, what they refer to as the fourth earth. 3 other earths existed prior to this earth that we know as the fourth earth, and each earth was destroyed for the same reason by the Creator. And that's because the Creator blessed the two-legged with a good, happy, easy life. And then rather than celebrating that luxury, for some reason, the two-legged starts treating each other poorly. And the Creator said, that's not how I intended you to live. So the Creator destroyed each earth differently, but for the same reason. And destroyed each earth differently, hoping we'd remember. But each time recognized there was good people. Had to go to this big hole in the ground here in the southwest, and they were protected from that destruction. Sometimes generations would have to live in this hole in the ground. Then eventually, the destruction would go away, and these people would emerge back out, and they'd try again. The first earth, the Creator destroyed by means of fire. The second earth, the Creator destroyed by means of ice. The third earth, the Creator destroyed by means of water. And when the water resided, the good people started coming out of that big hole in the ground, and they're waiting for was this individual they'd never seen before. And they're like, hey, who are you? And this individual goes, that's not important. What's important is you keep busy. You people over here, you go start off walking north, make a big circle. You south, you east, you west, make a big circle. You'll know each time it's time to move. And it'll be generation upon generation upon generation. And by the time that circle's completed, you're right back here again. Your great-grandchildren will understand how the Creator wants you to live and how you should treat each other properly. And I will so gladly take you to the fifth earth. And the hope you work for that individual is Mesa. Basic translation, child of the Creator. So archaeology and anthropology, it's a push out of here. For Pueblos, it's a pull. They're working their way back to the Sipapu, following Mesa's instructions. So it's all about spiritual movements. Today, for the Hopi and Zuni especially, the Sipapu, we don't call it the Sipapu. It's a national park we call the Grand Canyon. It's actually a spot in the Grand Canyon where there's the confluence of the Colorado and the Little Colorado. That's Bethlehem if you're a Pueblo person. That is the Sipapu. So spiritual movements, and some people have a hard time swallowing that. But I remind you, there's some people 250, 300 years ago, 250, that said, oh, we're tired of the King's Church. Didn't this country, wasn't it born for spiritual reasons? It's amazing how sometimes we don't swallow other stories, but we swallow our own, which is the exact same. And honestly, in my heart of hearts, I think all the theories probably work, complement each other. And I don't really know. And to me, I think their greatest accomplishment gets overlooked. They move. That's easy to say and that's easy to debate, but look how hard that would be. To go to an unknown, let's call it what they call it. They don't call this Cliff Palace. They don't call those burials. They call those mom and dad. Brother, sister, friend. They call this home. And this is comfortable and a lot of good memories. All of a sudden, take everything that you think you're going to need to survive in a bag this big, go walk 200-300 miles to a complete unknown maybe, where you don't even know if you're going to survive. They risked a lot, but they're still around today. They're doing quite well. So, do you want to have a group hug before we It is. No, that's a corn cob that's 700 years old. Yeah. So if you haven't looked up in this, please take the time to do that. I have to be the caboose. I'm going to stand over here. And I ask one favor of you guys. As you're walking up those steps, and we get on those steps first and turn around and take one more look here at Cliff Palace. But this time, just stand there. Look at it and make a memory. Make one that you can't delete. Because you deserve it and this place deserves it. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're going to climb back up that.
No problem. I'll take it.
All right, so now I need to swear you in. Those. All right, so raise your right hands. Repeat after me. I promise
I promise
to protect
to protect
the ruins,
the roots,
the rocks,
the rocks,
and trees
and trees
of Mesa Verde,
of Mesa Verde,
to hike safely,
to hike safely,
to recycle,
to recycle,
respect other cultures,
respect other cultures,
and to brush my teeth.
and brush my teeth.
All right, gentlemen, there you are. You are now junior rangers.
All right, good job, guys. Anybody want to grind some corn?
Yeah, if you want to try to grind some corn.
Okay.
Yes.
Do that for many, many hours to get a nice fine flour.
Okay, 12 hours.
All the flowers just
12 hours and then we can make a tortilla.
happening down the Spruce Tree.
12 hours per tortilla.
Everybody whacking them up.
Well watered by a natural seep spring. But poison ivy thrives here too, so it says to stay on the trail.
What's that trail there?
It's not
The one that's closed for poison ivy.
Anyway, number 3 says it's an alcove with a long history, which certainly predates this village. Go ahead, Ian. You've been waiting. All right, Lucas, you want to go after him?
Mind if I go?
Is that the time people are
What's up?
Probably being this old and maybe it's haunted. It's too small. Look at that. It's the ventilation.
Maybe we should make a room like this in our house.
Yeah, it's really nice in here too. You just like lie down up here. Yeah. But yeah, again, if there's an earthquake, you'd probably die. Yeah, you could die, but it'd probably hurt. The rays of light change when someone's falling down.
Go ahead.
It's actually really cool. It's not cool. It's not that dark. It looks dark, but it's not.
Man, they packed her. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a lot deeper.
To archaeologists. Put weight on that rock, it's gonna fall off the cliff. Some pebble.
And there is footprints down there. Somebody was down there.
Oh, maybe this is a bed. Yeah, was that a roof? Maybe this is where someone sleeps.
This was probably frequently added on to the community area. I started out as a single family unit, and then they started adding on to it. Smaller than you, but bigger than you. Isn't that right?
You were bigger than one of their 11-year-olds.
But Lucas got married on this trip.
But yeah, you got married, even though at 11 you would have been much smaller than you are now. But you still would have gotten married.
And Ian, you would have been like as tall as one of their 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
Maybe even 15.